Welcome to Transforming Human Consciousness. I am Kayvan Geola. This program is sponsored by the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Claremont. Baha'is believe that the gift of God to this enlightened age is the knowledge of the oneness of humanity and the fundamental oneness of all the religions. At the heart of the idea of religion is the very concept of educating humanity. And I have the pleasure today to introduce to you my guest, Dr. Hoda Mahmoudi, who is Associate Professor of Sociology at the Lutheran University in California Lutheran University. And the topic that we're going to be discussing, which is one of the, I understand, spiritual principles of the teachings of the Bahá'í Faith, is the topic of equality of the rights of men and women, which is very interesting to have as a topic coming from a religion. Traditionally, equal rights for women, the last place you can expect it to come would be a religion. So what my question is how this whole concept is introduced by a religion, and how does it fit within the teachings, religious teachings?
First of all, Kayvan, it's very nice to be here today. I really appreciate the opportunity. This principle of the equality of women and men is really a very interesting one, and I think your issue about how does a religion raise this is more important, because it seems to me that when we look at the world religions and their tenets about spiritual development and bringing about change in society, one area where there's really very little said about is the status of women. And so here we have in the writings of Baha'u'lláh, the prophet founder of the Bahá'í Faith, a great deal that has been said about how women should enjoy equal status with men, and that when women achieve full equality with men, that in fact this will be one of the prerequisites to peace. And it seems that in the past, it isn't that the other religions were not adequate or right, but rather it wasn't time. In fact, the Baha'i writings say that in the 20th century, one of the many things that became illumined was this notion of the equality of men and women. And the reason is that now is the time. Humanity has reached a point in its history that as it is approaching maturity, which is what Baha'u'lláh says, it is time for this equality.
Hoda, when we look around the women's lib movement and all the other movements, it seems that there is this notion that for a woman to be able to be equal to man, she needs to become a little bit more man-like. So what is the concept, this whole concept of equality, as you explain it, how is this reconciled?
Okay.
Are we supposed to become
like men?
Like men?
No, of course not. In fact, from the Baha'i context, equality of men and women does not mean sameness or uniformity, that women should behave and become like men or vice versa, but rather it's the complementary aspect of being a man and a woman. In other words, it has nothing to do with the fact that women should learn to behave as men. And Baha'u'lláh says that in terms of a person's soul, their essence, that man and woman are really equal at that level. What varies is their function in society. In other words, we know that biologically men and women are different and that they'll never be the same, even though there are movies out now, Junior, that says that a man can get pregnant and all that. I mean, that's just facetious. But the point is that from the Baha'i context, equality means how to create a just society in which women are afforded the same opportunities of education, of opportunity as men. And it really, in a sense, is very similar to the concept of how do we eliminate racism and bring about race unity. In the same way as we would want to give every member of society, whether minority or not, equal opportunity and access, the same applies to women. But it does not mean that women have to begin to behave like the men. In fact, this is something that's guarded against in the Baha'i writings, because again, we have to appreciate and accept the differences.
And well, how do you expect, with all that's going on out there, is this something that going to happen as a result of some kind of a opposition, revolution? Are the schools supposed to get involved in this? What is happening out there in society, is that enough? Are we there? Are there any examples in the world that we can say, okay, this is the model society right now?
In terms of change in relation to equality. You know, Kayvon, I wish there was a model. Unfortunately, when we look at the status of women around the world, it's a pretty bleak picture. We find that, you know, and it doesn't matter which society you look at. We could say that countries like the United States or Western Europe, women enjoy more equality. But again, even in those countries, there are issues that are difficult. There's oppression going on. But in terms of models, we do know that in societies, and anthropologists have helped a little bit in this area, not that we should go back in history and replicate what happened, but in societies where women are also engaged in service to society, not just as mothers, not just as housewives, but in other ways, when they are the means of production, whatever that might mean for a particular culture or society. We find that those societies advance, those societies have more of an egalitarian relationship between husband and wife, and the children benefit in those societies. But unfortunately, those societies are not currently prevalent in our world. What we find as a result of the Industrial Revolution is that we have more and more pushed what the role of a man should be away from what the role of a woman should be. And so we've created a polarity, you know, which is really dangerous in many ways. And more and more, it's interesting that fathers are beginning to say, well, what is my role as a father beyond just the breadwinner? Shouldn't I have a relationship with my children? And this is where Baha'is are really focusing on these roles, that the father and mother do have different functions, but they also, both of them also have an important responsibility towards rearing a child, towards being a model to the child about what a man ought to be and what a woman ought to be in terms of promoting equality for both genders.
So why do you think that you mentioned in the past that wasn't timely, but it is timely right now? But we know also that there are discrepancies between different parts of the world,
yes.
economically, socially. So the question is, why now?
Why now? Actually, there's a beautiful quotation in the Baha'i writings which in essence says that in the past men have ruled over women because of their more aggressive and their more forceful nature. Again, not to put men down, but these were qualities that were somehow needed in a sense to survive the societies that were in the past. But then the Baha'i quotation goes on to say that force and violence are losing their strength, and that this new century, this new age, this new time in which we live with these new teachings of Baha'u'lláh is a time where force and violence, aggression, have to give way to the qualities in which women are strong. And those are things like intuition, service, spiritual qualities of being sensitive to the needs of others and being able to find ways to advance the well-being of the group and not just the self. And so in these ways, the new age, according to the Baha'i teachings, is one which will be permeated with more of the what I might call androgynous aspects of being a man and a woman. In other words, if we continue on the course of violence, we will get nothing but violence in return. But we have to change this to, as I said, service, intuition, sensitivity, and these qualities which we see right now in our crazy world, that we need more of these qualities.
So when we are saying that we are really having too much violence and too much, we are really referring to some masculine qualities? Some
qualities, yes, that are masculine because of the nature of human development historically. But now we are seeing more and more that those qualities aren't necessary. In fact, they don't benefit us at all. You know, at one time it was okay to go out and hunt and kill and bring in the products of the hunt, or to protect one's village and family from the enemy, so to speak, because that's the level at which humanity was at. But now, you know, how many times will we destroy the world with our arsenal? It doesn't make sense. It's not logical anymore.
So what you're suggesting is a movement away from the concept of let's resolve it with aggression.
Exactly.
Use more feminine qualities. Let's resolve it with consultation.
Consultation, communication, and really using what human beings are capable of, which is their higher nature of coming together and being logical with each other.
Why don't we take a break?
Sure.
I think we're coming to a place where we can take a break. And then when we come back, talk about who's going to bring all this about.
Okay.
I mean, what's the process like? Please stay tuned and we shall be back. Welcome back, and we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Hoda Mahmoudi about the equality of men and women. It's a very fascinating topic. It seems like in the West we have exhausted many avenues of bringing this topic into reality, but in many levels also it seems like we are far from where we are supposed to get. I would think in the area of family life, for example, relationship in the family and also in society. So my question to you is, who's going to do it? How are we going to do it? Is this the responsibility of women? Men are supposed to come in and do it. How government is supposed to get involved. Is that all there is to the institutions which are supposed to be busy? How are we going to establish this whole thing?
Okay. Well, that's a very profound question. I mean, I think that's really where the real practical nature of this principle lies. I think it starts first with each person's acceptance of the fact that all human beings are created equal. I mean, I think that is the overarching principle at the core of this. I mean, that we teach from day one, teach the children and in schools that really humankind, all the diversity that we have in humankind, of nationhood, of race, of culture, of language, whatever the difference, that these are not things to be viewed as strange, or that those are different people than me, but that rather this is a family of humanity.
So you are suggesting there should be an umbrella,
yes,
under which everyone fits in.
Yes, it has to start from that premise. Then the next stage is, if we do accept that all human beings are one, it doesn't matter whether male or female. It doesn't matter whether black or white, whether rich or poor. You know, you can keep going and expanding on that. But the other aspect that is also very important is human beings as models. In other words, to live what we say, to preach, you know, is not enough. To be a model.
So using examples.
Examples. In other words, I think that especially when it comes to equality of women and men, within the family, it is so important that what the mother and father portray for the children, it's critical, because, you know, if the children see that there is, let's just say, disrespect between the father and mother, that there's violence shown by one to the other, that one ends up doing more around the home than the other. You know, I mean, you can keep going about all the examples that a child might see. Then, you know, the children will pick up on that. Whether you teach them the oneness of humankind, whether you teach them that everyone is equal, if the parents are behaving differently, that's what they're going to model. Beyond that, also, parents have such a strong responsibility, and this is where the Baha'i writings are quite specific, that both mother and father should take responsibility for the education of the child.
So mother is not the only one.
Mother is the first. Granted, you know, mother carries the child for 9 months. Those early periods after the birth of a child, the bond that develops between mother and child is very important. But that doesn't mean for the next 18 years she's the sole responsible person. In fact, Baha'u'lláh really puts a lot of emphasis on the role of the father as well towards education of the children. And then beyond this, that the boy and the girl child be given equal opportunity. You know, there's research right now that indicates that from the moment that parents find out that their child is a girl or a boy, they automatically have these expectations, almost unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
She should be treated carefully and taken care of very protectively, tenderly, etc. He should be adventuresome. He should get out there and explore these things. And
so
you
if
know,
the boy gets into things,
yeah,
it's okay. If the
right,
girl gets into
right.
things, it's
From there, we start this discrimination, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so how careful we have to be as parents to make sure we don't have this bias, you know, that of course the girl will not be good in math or science. Of course the boy will be better in such and thus. You know, these things we really need to be very careful of, because there isn't any evidence to show that boys or girls are necessarily stronger or in one or the other. And there's research that proves this. What intervenes, what becomes a source of interference, is the parents' presumptions about this.
So parents are a very important part
Extremely.
of this whole process of acknowledging that there's equality.
Extremely.
Who else gets involved?
Okay. Then I was going to move on to the schools. The Baha'i writings say that the curriculum at school should be equal for boys and girls. There should be no difference. And now we might say, well, but the curriculum is equal in this country. And yet there are all kinds of studies that are showing that when you get to the layer, when you remove some layers, we're finding, like, for example, there's this dilemma. Why aren't more girls entering the hard sciences, the natural sciences?
Is that the way?
And this is one of the problems right now. Recently, a study was done by the Association for University Women, for University Professors and all. And they found out that part of the reason is the expectations that teachers place upon boys versus girls. The assumption is that boys will do better at math and girls will not do well in math. And so even in the teaching, there is not enough attention, energy given to the girls.
So the expectation of the teacher plays a role in the
Absolutely.
Actualization of the student.
Yes. And you know, again, this principle is so close to the issue of race unity and racism. You know, I want to keep bringing that up because it provides more illumination for us when we look at it. Just as it has been a case where teachers would tell a black child, for example, boy or girl, especially the boys in this case, that no, you don't want to go into medicine, you don't want to go into law, you'd rather be a plumber, you'd rather be a carpenter, whatever. In the same way, we do these kinds of similar segregative things with girls and boys.
Historically, has religion played a positive, negative, no role in this whole process?
Unfortunately, it has played a negative role, and I have to be careful here. I think the prophet founders of religions have always viewed men and women as the same. I really think if we look at the writings, for example, Jesus talks about men and women as being spiritually capable of taking the message, and certainly in the examples of Moses and Jesus and Muhammad and others, we see this. But then always there is this human element that enters into religion where women are pushed aside you know, it's interesting that in Christianity, for example, now there's a lot of research that is going back and examining that there were women priests in the beginning. But little by little, they were pushed aside. Or that there were, in the Jewish faith, there were very strong, educated women. But because of the culture and the traditions of that time, they were pushed away.
So time was not ready.
Time was not ready, really. And how much more careful we have to be now to eliminate those traditions which no longer are viable and healthy.
I'd like to ask you, you come from a background, I know you were raised here in this country, but you come from a background where truly women were oppressed and they did not receive education a couple of generations back. So how has this been, being raised in a Baha'i family, how has it been for you?
Interesting question.
Is equality acknowledged? Do you realize it? Do you?
Yes, actually, it's interesting. When I was 10 when I left my home country, and in my own family, I noticed that my mother was very traditional woman, and I always had a difficult time with that. And I realized that what was bothering me was the fact that why does it have to be like that? Why isn't she also doing more beyond just the traditional female things? So this has been very much a part of my life, and in my marriage with an American, I find that we work at this principle constantly, even after 19 years of marriage.
It's
you know,
a challenge.
It is a challenge, but a good one, a healthy
So something
one.
to that you have to work at it.
Yes,
Right,
that's
that you
no,
granted.
exactly. You have to constantly communicate with each other.
Be
on this.
mindful of it
Yes.
and make it a reality. The topic is very vast. There is so much to explore it, and I really appreciate
My pleasure.
you coming and it's a springboard for many
I hope so.
discussions in the community about this whole issue and take it to fruition. Thank you again for
having
being with
me.
us.
Okay.
If there are any questions, any comments about the programs, please contact us to Bahá'í Faith, P.O. Box 66, Claremont, California. The phone number is 99626-2569 for transforming human consciousness. Being with us.